Welcome to episode 2 of The Too Late Show. This is the episode where you learn I only own one suit. Thanks for the great intro from Kaz. Kaz, how was your week? Saz had an online seminar recently about the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic and how it relates to today. Funnily enough, 1918 was also the last time that the Vanderbilt bathrooms were cleaned. Corona obviously poses a lot of issues, some obvious and some less so. For instance, how do police apprehend a suspect while still keeping 6 feet away? Well, luckily, an Indian police force has come up with a solution and they tweeted out this video.
Hands up! Hold it.
The police chief said he had the idea after spending 400 rupees to win a plushy minion. The governor of Kentucky has apologized to Tupac Shakur, a 46-year-old cook from Lexington whose unemployment check was held up because the governor thought he was using a fake name. When the governor realized that Tupac Shakur was a real person, he quickly apologized. When asked for a comment, the Kentucky resident had this to say.
It's hard to be legit and still pay your rent.
A man in Adelaide, Australia has been released from prison after beating a busker dressed as a banana with his own ukulele. The man initially pled guilty, but told the judge, "Your Honor, in my defense, the busker was playing Wonderwall." In other news, earlier this week, it looked like yet another country was going to have their first female leader before the US. Who was the champion of women's rights this time? North Korea. After rumors about the death of Kim Jong-un, many speculated that his sister would become the next supreme leader. However, the speculations have been put to rest after Kim appeared alive at the opening of a fertilizer factory. Come on, Kim. You come back from the dead and your grand reveal was at the opening of a poop factory? What was your backup plan for the reveal? A Fudgy the Whale cake? We have a great show for you tonight. Savannah Parker is our musical guest, but first, I hopped on a Zoom call with Josh Schiffer, a SAS parent and infectious disease doctor at Fred Hutch, to answer questions about COVID-19. Dr. Josh Schiffer, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to answer some questions. I wanted to start with one that I think is on a lot of people's minds, which is, what does school look like in the fall? And for seniors, what does college look like?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I'll start by saying I know that you and your friends have had, unfortunately, to make a huge sacrifice, and I'm so sorry you lost a part of your senior year. I know that must not be easy, and I know that the anxiety of not knowing what's coming in the fall also must be difficult. I'm relatively optimistic that there will be school in the fall, but I think that anybody who projects complete certainty as to what's coming down the road probably shouldn't be listened to. I think there are a lot of variables that could dictate this. I have no question that as a society, we'll all be dealing with COVID in the fall, and it in all likelihood will be worse in some places than others, and it will be difficult to predict when and where small outbreaks and so-called second waves will occur. So it's very possible that there will be school, but that school will be hampered by interruptions once again, and that the way that school is carried out will be different. But it's hard for me to get more specific than that, other than I doubt that it will be completely normal.
Do you think that could mean, like, are we going to be wearing masks? Are there going to be like smaller class sizes? Are those the kind of things that we would see?
I think both of those are real possibilities. The issue with school is really quite tricky because it appears that for children as well as young adults, the risk of SARS-CoV-2 is really extremely low. And so by making these sort of concessions and sacrifices, what young people your age will be doing is protecting the rest of society. And it's because the disease is so mild in younger people, and we've been flooded with cases. It's actually a relatively understudied area. And a critical priority that will help answer the question you ask is to really figure out to what extent younger people are contributing to the spread to other people. And I think once we know that, we can really design more rational policies. If it were to start tomorrow, my preference would be to have some form of physical distancing within the classroom, as well as masks. I think does make a lot of sense.
Speaking of policies, a lot of states recently have been doing different levels of things to try and open up, some which have faced a lot of criticism. In your ideal world, what does opening up look like?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that question, to be honest. I think that what is most important is that we are learning as we go, and that we are prepared before we make big changes. That it's really critical that we have enough tests available to test people very liberally as we open. It's very critical that we have the machinery and the manpower in place to do what's called contact tracing, so that when new infections are identified, we can very quickly source the people who might have had contact with the infected person, be it at school, be it at home, be it on a bus or in a restaurant, and contact those people to follow them very closely and make sure they are also not infected. And so at a very broad level, I understand these things need to be in place, but I'm not sure anybody knows the best order in which to do all of this. And so we need to really be learning from each other. So if one state takes on a different angle than another, that's perhaps okay, as long as when mistakes are recognized, they're identified very early. The analogy that I've heard made a couple of times, which I think is great, that when we flattened the curve, what we were doing was turning off the light. And it was very obvious we had to do that. And the fact that we did that effectively in our state almost certainly saved thousands of lives, and across the country, despite the fact that it wasn't as effective in other areas, even in places that were hard hit, saved tens of thousands of lives easily. That was obvious, but the dimmer switch is the next point, and that's gradually turning the light back on. And how to go about that is a much trickier and unknown area, I think. So we need to learn as we go.
One thing that I've been seeing people doing is, in quarantine, trying to find ways to still interact with people, doing things like going on walks, but sticking 6 feet apart, meeting up in like large open spaces, giving distance. Is that something that's safe to do? Is that something that you're worried about, or is there a safe way to do something like that?
I think for the most part it's safe, and I really encourage it. At this point in time, I worry about people's mental health. I think it's imperative that people get outside. I think it's even we're reaching a point where it's, I think, okay to or will very soon be okay to socialize with friends in a very careful way, with maintaining physical distance. And so I think that these things need to happen. It's a fine line. My son and I were taking a walk the other night, and there was a house party, and that it was clearly an environment where I looked at it for 5 seconds, and it was clear that if somebody at that party were infected, they could easily be transmitting to many other people. And that's terrible. And that has the ability not only to impact the people at the party, but their older or more fragile relatives. And so it has to be done carefully, but absolutely, I think as we open up, we should be making an effort to see the ones we love, to see our friends. In your case, I really hope you get to spend quality time with your classmates and your good friends before you head off, this summer.
We've heard a lot about like the 6 feet rule, obviously. How long do you think that is going to be a rule that's in place? Is that something that's going to like is the distance going to slowly go down? Are we going to get 5 feet and then 4 feet, or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the 6 feet is a little bit arbitrary to begin with. There, that sort of came basic science studies of how far droplets project when people sneeze and cough. So I'm not sure. I can't give you data on what will happen if we go from 6 feet to 8 feet or 6 feet to 4 feet. Again, I think the critical thing is that we have the tools in place to recognize small outbreaks very quickly. That the rules are great because they give us all a structure in which to go about our day and feel like other people, but they're somewhat arbitrary, and I have a tough time predicting how they will loosen up. I mean, we're all going through a major event in human history right now. Just imagine thinking in October, when this was all starting, that in 4 months from now we're all going to be living at our homes with our parents, not doing much, and having a shared experience with people in almost every country around the globe who are doing the exact same thing, with almost a complete shutdown of the international economy. It's almost hard to imagine. And so if you just take a step back and look at what we're going through, it's unprecedented. And so how we get out of it's a little hard to predict. The details are hard to predict. And I would love to look in a crystal ball and see what it looks like in 6 months, but I just don't know.
My last question is kind of about the world as a whole. What do you think, or what do you hope that the world learns from COVID-19?
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, I think that in my case, this is more on a personal note. This tragedy has allowed my wife and I to reconnect with friends who we had completely lost contact with for decades, really, years and decades in certain cases. And when I reflect on why I never called these people, why I never kept in touch, I don't have a good reason. I mean, there were so many times we could have. And so at a very basic level, it reinforces how great it is to have good people in your life and to not lose track of them and to reconnect with them. So I'm, very hopeful in that capacity that this will improve people in a certain way. I think from the standpoint of science in our country, we were completely caught off guard. We didn't have adequate testing, and many people died as a result of that. We did not have adequate plans in place for surge flow, and this left physicians on the front lines in a very vulnerable position. And now we're seeing them have infrastructure to rapidly test drugs in a way that we probably should. And so my real hope and prayer is that this will happen again in our lifetimes. I am certain. We're a very interconnected world. We are the places where this tends to happen is when humanity is at sort of the margins of the wilderness. And so a lot of these viruses come from wild animals, and I don't see that going away. So this will happen again, and I just really hope that the next time when we're 3 months into it, we already have a game plan for just about everything. And so I think that will just change both scientifically and just as people will have prolonged, lasting changes.
All right. Dr. Josh Schiffer, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to answer some questions.
You bet, Zach. It's a real pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, here to perform Philip Phillips' song Home, Savannah Parker.
Hold on. as we roll down this unfamiliar road, and all this wave is stringing us along. Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home. Settle down, it'll all be clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear. Though the trouble that might drag you down, if you get lost you can always be found. Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home. Oh, oh, settle down, it'll all be clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear. Oh, the trouble that might drag you down, if you get lost you can always be found. Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
Thanks so much for watching. That's our show. I'll see you next week when I'll be wearing the same suit.